The train was supposed to be ordinary, nothing more than a long, overnight haul from Prague to Zurich. Daniel sat near the window, watching faint reflections of himself blur against the snow-streaked glass. He'd taken dozens of trains in his life, but there was something about night travel, something unsettling. The world outside turned into an endless black void, pierced only by ghostly flickers of snowy fields and pale farmhouses. He shifted in his seat, rubbing his palms together for warmth. The heating on this train was unreliable, hissing and clanking like an old boiler. Across from him sat a woman in her 30s, her hair tied neatly back, eyes locked on a book she clearly wasn't reading. Her gaze flickered too often to the aisle. Daniel had tried offering a polite smile earlier, but she returned it stiffly, as if conversation was something to be avoided. The train rocked, the steel wheels screeching faintly as it curved along mountain tracks. Midnight was approaching. Most passengers had gone quiet, retreating into their berths or nodding off under coats. A young man with a battered rucksack shuffled past, looking restless, maybe searching for the dining car. Daniel noticed how the conductor didn't stop him for a ticket check. Odd. Then, with a shudder, the train slowed. Not at a station, not at any place Daniel could see, just in the middle of nowhere. The deceleration was gradual but undeniable. The woman across from him looked up sharply. "Why are we stopping?" she asked aloud, though Daniel could tell the question wasn't meant for him specifically. Outside, there was nothing but swirling snow and the faint outline of trees. No town, no platform, just wilderness. The intercom crackled, producing only static before falling silent. Daniel frowned. Usually, the conductor's voice would reassure passengers, explaining the delay. Nothing came. A few murmurs rippled through the carriage. People stirred, pressing faces to the windows, whispering. Somewhere further down, a child began to cry. Daniel stood, his curiosity outweighing caution. "I'll check," he muttered, stepping into the corridor. The woman followed with her eyes, but said nothing. The corridor lights flickered, buzzing faintly. Daniel moved toward the end of the car, where a narrow window looked out onto the track. His stomach tightened. Through the haze of falling snow, he saw a structure, a station platform, but dark and derelict. The lettering on the wall was faded, the roof half collapsed. It looked abandoned, long forgotten. Yet the train had stopped there, perfectly aligned with the empty platform. Daniel tried the door handle. Locked. Behind him, the young man with the rucksack appeared, his breath visible in the cold air of the corridor. "You see it too?" he asked quietly. His accent was thick, Eastern European. Daniel nodded. "Do you know this place?" The young man shook his head. "It's not on the route. Shouldn't be." His voice carried an edge of fear. "Why stop here?" Footsteps approached. The conductor emerged from the other end of the corridor, his uniform crisp, expression unreadable. "Please return to your seats," he said firmly. Daniel gestured toward the window. "Why are we stopped? What station is this?" The conductor's eyes narrowed. For a moment, Daniel thought he saw something flicker there. Annoyance? Alarm? Then the man's face smoothed. "Technical checks. Nothing to worry about. Stay seated." He walked past them briskly, unlocking a side door with a ring of keys and stepping out onto the snowy platform. The door closed behind him with a metallic clunk. The young man cursed under his breath. "That's no technical check." Daniel returned to his compartment, pulse quickening. The woman looked at him, waiting. "Well?" she asked. He sat down slowly. "We're at an abandoned station. Conductor says it's just technical checks." Her face paled. But you don't believe him, do you? The lights flickered again. Somewhere in the next car, a dull thud echoed, like a door slamming or something heavier. Daniel swallowed hard, realizing he had no answer. The sound didn't come again, but the silence that followed felt heavier. The passengers whispered nervously, their voices hushed like conspirators in a chapel. Daniel caught the eye of the woman across from him. Her book was closed now, her fingers gripping it like a shield. "What's your name?" he asked suddenly, his voice low. She hesitated. "Elise." "Daniel," he said. Names felt like anchors. In a moment this strange, they mattered. The young man with the rucksack reappeared in the aisle, eyes darting nervously. "He's not back," he muttered. "The conductor. Been gone too long." Elise straightened. Maybe he went to speak with the driver. Then why lock the door behind him? The young man countered. Daniel stood again, drawn toward the corridor. This time Elise followed him. The rucksack stranger trailed close, as if proximity might protect him. The three of them reached the end of the car. Snow gusted faintly against the narrow window, blurring the ruined station outside. The conductor was nowhere in sight. Daniel pressed his face closer to the glass. Something shifted in the snow, movement near the far end of the platform. He squinted. A figure? A shadow? It seemed to stagger oddly, half hidden in the storm. Elise caught her breath. "Do you see that?" Before Daniel could answer, the train jolted. Not forward, not backward, just a violent shudder that rattled the windows and sent passengers gasping. Then stillness. The intercom crackled again. Static hissed, then a distorted voice. "Remain seated. Do not." The rest dissolved into noise. The young man cursed again. "They're playing with us." Panic was starting to bloom in the carriage. People rose, demanding answers, calling out for staff. But no one came. The doors between cars were locked. Daniel turned back toward Elise and the stranger. "We need to move. See if we can reach the driver." Elise nodded quickly. The staff car should connect to the locomotive. But the stranger shook his head. "I tried already. Doors chained. It's like they want us trapped." Daniel studied him. His rucksack looked worn, straps frayed. He was young, but his eyes had the jittery sharpness of someone used to trouble. "What's your name?" "Marco." "All right, Marco," Daniel said. "Then what do you suggest?" "Just sit here." Marco looked at the passengers, restless and afraid. "No. We find another way." He reached into his bag and pulled out a small flashlight, clicking it on. The beam cut through the dim corridor light. "Emergency windows," he said. "Every car has them." Elise swallowed. "You want to get off? Into that storm?" "Better than waiting," Marco replied. But before they could argue further, a scream split the air. It came from the next car over, sharp and sudden. Passengers jolted, heads whipping toward the sound. The crying child began wailing louder. Daniel's blood turned cold. What was that? Another sound followed, a dull dragging, like something heavy being pulled across the floor. Elise gripped his arm. "We need to see." Together, the three of them pushed toward the connecting door. Locked. Daniel pounded on it, shouting. No answer. The dragging sound stopped. Then, faintly, footsteps approached on the other side. Slow, deliberate. Everyone in the carriage went silent. The only sound was the hollow thud of shoes on metal flooring, nearing the door. Daniel backed up, heart hammering. The footsteps stopped right at the threshold. A pause. Then, 3 slow knocks. Passengers screamed. Elise covered her mouth. Marco raised his flashlight like a weapon. The door handle jiggled. Locked from their side, but someone, or something, was testing it. Daniel forced himself forward, voice tight. "Who's there?" Silence. The knocking stopped. The footsteps retreated. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then, from the other end of the carriage, the child's mother shouted, "Where's my boy?" Daniel spun. The seat where the child had been, empty. The mother's cry cut through the air like a knife. She lunged into the aisle, frantically searching between seats, her hands clawing back coats and blankets. "Lucas! Lucas!" Her voice cracked, high and desperate. Daniel's stomach turned. The boy hadn't walked past him. He hadn't heard the door open. It was as if the child had simply vanished. Passengers rose, shouting questions, some accusing, some terrified. The air grew hot with panic, despite the freezing drafts creeping through the walls. Elise pressed close to Daniel, her nails digging into his sleeve. "He was right there," she whispered. "How does a child disappear in plain sight?" Marco's jaw clenched. Something's happening in the next car. That's where the sound came from. The mother's cries escalated until 2 men tried to calm her, holding her back as she fought to reach the locked door. Her face was blotched with tears, hair falling loose around her. "Open it! My son is in there! Open it!" Daniel glanced at the others, faces pale, eyes wide. Everyone wanted answers, but no one dared move. The conductor was still missing, the intercom silent. Then Daniel made a choice. He stepped toward the mother and spoke firmly, louder than he felt brave enough to. "We'll find him. But we need tools, something to break the lock." It was Marco who answered the call. From his rucksack, he pulled a small folding knife and a screwdriver. "Not much," he muttered, "but maybe enough." Together, Daniel and Marco knelt by the connecting door. Daniel's fingers shook as he worked the screwdriver into the narrow gap between latch and frame. Metal groaned. Elise hovered, clutching the flashlight for them. Finally, with a sharp snap, the latch gave way. The door creaked open into darkness. The stench hit first. Acrid, metallic, like rust or blood. Daniel gagged, raising his sleeve to his nose. Elise swung the flashlight beam into the gloom. The car was almost empty. Seats overturned, luggage scattered. But no people. No boy. Then Daniel's eyes caught something on the floor near the far end, a smear dark and wet, trailing toward the exit door. The mother shoved past him, screaming her son's name, racing down the aisle. "Wait!" Daniel shouted, but she was gone into the shadows, the flashlight beam barely keeping up. They followed, but too late. The exit door at the far end slammed shut with a metallic clang. Elise gasped. "She's outside." Daniel rattled the handle. Locked from the other side. Snow whipped against the tiny window, obscuring any view. Marco swore under his breath. "This is wrong. This is so wrong." Daniel turned sharply. "What do you know?" "Nothing," Marco snapped, but his eyes betrayed him. He looked guilty. Elise caught it too. "You've seen something like this before." Marco's lips tightened, but before he could answer, the intercom sputtered again. A voice, this time clear, cold, almost mechanical. "Passengers, remain in your seats. Do not attempt to leave the train." The line went dead. A silence hung over them. Then, faintly, from outside the car, a cry pierced the night. "The mother!" farther away now, but shrill with terror. Daniel's blood ran cold. She's out there, and she's not alone. They stood frozen, listening. The snowstorm howled, swallowing sound, except for one unmistakable noise, a long, dragging scrape against the train's exterior, like claws raking metal. Passengers shrieked, retreating down the aisle. Elise clutched Daniel's arm. That wasn't human. Marco's flashlight beam quivered across the windows. Frost-coated glass reflected their pale faces back at them. Nothing outside but whirling white. Then, as if to answer, a shape slammed against the window. A hand, pale and stiff, smeared with snow and something darker. It slid downward, leaving a streak. Elise screamed. Daniel yanked her back. Marco swore and fumbled the flashlight. The hand was gone. But now every passenger knew something was moving out there, and it was close. For a long moment, no one breathed. The train felt like a coffin, sealed tight while something prowled outside. Daniel's ears strained for any sound beneath the storm. The passengers crowded together at the center of the car, whispering prayers, arguments, half-mad theories. Elise stayed glued to Daniel's side, her hand trembling in his. Marco paced, muttering in his own language, eyes darting toward the doors as if calculating escape. Finally, Daniel spoke. "We can't just sit here. The mother's out there. The boy too. If we do nothing." Marco cut him off. "If we go out there, we're dead. You saw that hand." Elisa's voice was tight. "Then what are you suggesting?" "Just wait until it comes in here." Marco didn't answer. The train shuddered again, a low groan through its frame. Not moving, just shaking like something was testing its weight. Snow rattled against the windows, thicker now, obscuring everything. Then the intercom clicked on. Not static this time. Breathing. Slow. Heavy. Unnatural. The sound filled the carriage, echoing from every speaker. Passengers screamed, some covering their ears, others pleading for it to stop. Daniel's chest tightened. "They're toying with us." The breathing cut off. A pause. Then words, distorted, almost human. "Next stop. All passengers must disembark." The intercom died. "No," Elise whispered. "No, we can't stay." Marco shouldered his rucksack. "Emergency window. Now." He led them toward the end of the car, toward the small red-marked frame. His hands shook as he pulled at the latch. It resisted, frozen in place. He slammed it with the butt of his flashlight until the glass cracked. Cold wind burst in, stinging skin and stealing breath. Snow howled through the gap, flakes whipping like knives. Beyond, only the faint outline of the ruined station. Daniel looked at Elise. "It's our only chance." She nodded once. Marco climbed through first, dropping onto the platform below. Elise followed, Daniel pushing her through. He was last, pulling himself out into the storm. The cold hit like a fist. His lungs seized, his fingers numbed instantly. They stumbled together onto the abandoned platform. The station loomed, skeletal beams jutting into the storm. Marco waved them forward. Inside. Shelter. They staggered through the snow toward the gaping entrance. The wind roared behind them, carrying faint noises. Footsteps? Dragging. Daniel didn't look back. The station interior was colder still, but shielded from the wind. Their flashlights swept across broken benches, shattered glass, graffiti-scrawled walls. The place had been dead for decades. Or almost dead. Elise gasped. Against the far wall, half hidden in shadows, lay the mother. Her eyes were wide open, face frozen in terror. Her body was twisted, stiff, dusted with snow. Daniel's stomach lurched. Elise buried her face against him. Marco swore under his breath, flashlight trembling. "We have to keep moving." But then, faintly, another sound. A whimper. Small. Weak. Daniel froze. The boy. They turned toward a stairwell leading down to the old service tunnels. The whimper echoed again, childlike, plaintive. Elisa's face was pale. "It's a trap." Daniel's heart pounded. Or it's him. They hesitated, torn. Then Marco started down the stairs, muttering, "We can't leave him." The tunnels reeked of damp stone and rust. Their flashlights caught glimpses of old signage, crumbling pipes. The whimper grew louder, guiding them deeper. At last they reached a chamber. In the center, Lucas, the boy, crouched and shivering. His eyes were wide, reflecting the flashlight beam. "Lucas!" Elise gasped, rushing forward. But Daniel hesitated. Something about the boy's stillness, the way his head tilted ever so slightly. It was wrong. "Wait!" Daniel shouted. Too late. Elise knelt, reaching for the child. His lips parted. But instead of words, a low, rasping exhale poured out. The sound wasn't human. Marco yanked Elise back just as Lucas's body convulsed, his limbs twisting in unnatural angles. The whimper turned into a guttural shriek. The flashlight beam caught his face, eyes hollow, mouth stretched too wide. Elise screamed. Daniel pulled her toward the stairs. Marco shoved them ahead, his rucksack thudding against the wall. They scrambled upward, the shrieks chasing them, echoing through the tunnels. Back in the station, they ran for the platform. The train still stood there, silent, waiting. Its doors were open now, wide open. Passengers inside were gone. Every seat empty. Daniel's breath caught. Elise whispered, "Where are they?" Marco shook his head, voice hoarse. "Doesn't matter. If the train moves again, it's our only way out." The ground trembled beneath them. The shrieks rose from the stairwell behind. Daniel made his choice. He grabbed Elisa's hand, sprinting toward the open doors. Marco followed, stumbling, as the first inhuman shapes began to emerge from the stairwell. They leapt into the train. The doors slammed shut behind them with a hiss. The locomotive roared to life. With a lurch, the train began to move, pulling away from the ruined station, leaving the shadows behind. Inside, the carriages were empty. Too empty. The silence pressed in, heavier than before. Elise clutched Daniel's hand, tears streaking her frozen face. What happens now? Daniel didn't answer. His eyes were fixed on the corridor ahead, where the conductor now stood. Only this time his face was pale, his eyes black hollows. "Next stop," he said in that same distorted voice from the intercom. "End of the line." The train thundered into the storm, carrying them toward whatever waited in the dark.